Right, so this is a Stack Overflow question that I'm going to try to answer in real time. And actually, the question is here. Can someone please explain this? What's the email index over here? And I think that they're referring to, well, I'm not 100% sure from this actual question, but it's got email key over here. And email key is actually just a string. And so we look at what the index is. The index is calling something on this string basically. But here it's got email index and user list. And I think the confusion is because we can see this here. It says normally we take index. Let me just zoom in possibly a tiny bit if I can. Control plus. It says normally we take dot index on the given list, which is kind of like true. So we'll see what that means. But here index is also included. It is also included of another list afterwards, like this. Dot index email key is there. Is it a question from? It is a question from Courses Quick Labs. Okay, I don't know what Courses Quick Labs is, but I've actually provided some kind of comment, which is this is actually quite common. And it suggests that there might be a list of lists. At least it suggests that the first element in the list might be a list. So let's just go and take some of this stuff and put it in, and we'll format like a proper answer for this particular question. So I'm just going to copy this and stick it straight into our VS Code over here. And basically, first of all, this user data list needs to be actually a list. So let's just say that user data list now is equal to some kind of list like that. Now that looks all okay. Now if we were to run it, I think we're just going to get an error because it's going to try to access element 0 of the list, which is the first item of the list, index 0. And well, okay, we can break this down, but basically here element 0, if we do that, also we'll just make this select 100, 200, 300. Right, and then let's just see what .index actually does here. Just to remind ourselves, cannot access member.index from type int. And the reason why is that this is an integer here. So this in itself has to be at least a list. So something like this. Hello, world. Right. True. And what else can we put in there? 3.14159 pi. There we go, like a whole bunch of things. So this is now a list of lists. We're allowed to do this in Python. Python is very flexible. And .index email key, let's just email key is something and email address. Okay. So hello, I guess. Let's just do something like that. And world. I'm just trying to construct something that actually fits into this list. So here's like the first item of the list. Now I'm going to have to break the list up a little bit just for clarity there. Hit return. So our list now is beginning to look something like this. I'm trying to construct something that actually works. So F5 on that. I just wonder if the .index on it's going to work. Just seeing. Email address is not in list. Okay. That's cool. Because we could just take this one here. And now just delete that. I wonder if that will work, and do F5. And well, okay, it worked, but we need to actually print it out. So print email index. So something like that, I guess. So F5. And that looks like it works because This is index number 2. So this is index number 0. This is index number 1. And then this is index number 2. So something like this. So now I have to attempt to reconstruct an answer for the person, because there's lots of vociferous people that like to do the downvoting. And I might actually even suggest that I wonder if I can do a type hint here, but this is actually of type list itself. No, it doesn't accept that. So I wonder how we type hint that this is of type, that the first index of the list is actually a list. So how do we do that? So I might actually go to Claude, and I'm going to start a new version, but something like start new chat. I'm a real big fan now of type hinting. So how to type hint one an index of a list, if assuming that we can do that. So question mark, we might not be able to do that from typing import list. Possibly, I'm not sure. I've just thought of another idea that I could do from that, but basically here over here is basically to say this for clarity. For clarity, we've got this, but actually this component, this email index, is actually of type list over here, and then it will be email index dot index there of email key, and that would suffice. I wonder even if we now have to type hint over here. We actually do, funny enough, because it doesn't know that this is actually an index. This is of type list. And this is the thing about Python. It really I'm now always using VS Code, and if I didn't use VS Code, I would use another IntelliSense type of thing, because we get the colorization of it. So this, I can't remember what it's called, but basically I can tell from the coloring automatically if it's accepted, and we can do things like with these little dots, and if it doesn't pull down, so that's the IntelliSense basically. If we do a dot and all the methods are available, then it kind of like that comes down and you can select it from the list, or like you can see that it's appearing. So like when I do email index, we can see already that it's popping up, so it's recognized. And when I do dot, we can see that there's certain things. So we know that email index is of type list. Now if it isn't, then it's kind of like you're beginning to throw ambiguity into the actual code itself. So this is really what it actually is. So let's just attempt to construct an answer now that is sensible for the person, which is basically this can be the case where there is a list of lists, or at least the first index of the list is a list itself. Right, now I'm going to have to explain this, and what we do is here we're going to do here is an example of how this would work. Python, right? And then basically imagine a list that looks like this, ... So I should actually copy the whole lot in here. This was the code in the question. In the for clarity with type hinting, it looks like this. So it's going to look something like this. This is basically the case. Let's just check that this is all going in there. Yep, okay. So this is basically this is a case where there is a list of lists. I should probably do something like this, where there is a list of lists, or at least the first index, which is actually 0 in our case. The first index of the list is a list itself. Here is an example of how this would work. Okay, and then we provide an example of how this would work. This was a code in the original question, and then we get both here would return number 2. So over here we would say both would print 2. As a result, and then post the answer. Now I'm hoping that's kind of like sufficient. We always get these like comments and snidey things, you get the markdowns, but like this is kind of like, I would have struggled on this when I first started, that's for sure. But it's actually quite simple. Basically, you have a list, and the first index of the list is a list itself. So I wonder if I've explained it clearly enough. This can be the case where there is a list of lists, or at least the first index 0 of the list is a list itself. I could put something like, in your case, use a data list. Well, I kind of like have done that. I suppose. So I put this was the code in the original question. Okay, fine. I think that that's sufficient. So I'm going to kind of like leave it there. That is that's basically how lists work. Now, I'm going to say this is poor practice. I just don't like this, because it makes the assumption, and I always used to do this, and like people who try to make the code more concise tend to do this kind of thing, which is this and then .index. But the user now had to know that this first item here was actually a list, and there's no way of like necessarily telling that, or at least telling the user that that needed to be a list. And the type hinting in Python here is actually quite important. Like this now, I'm expecting this to be a list, and if it's not a list, it's going to break my code. Like literally, if I change this to something like just, so I delete that and then put hello. Right, that's not a list anymore. I don't even know what's going to come back, but will it break here because it hasn't got an index, or will it give the H from hello over here? Let's just even have a look, as in that's the first item in index 0, because this might be classified as being a list. Let's just print F5 here to run it. No, it does break it down, right? Substring not found, value error, which is a bit of a, I'm not even sure if I recognize that comment as much. I have to start Googling up a comment. It's a value error. But I could tell from the colouring of the code that it didn't get that yellow colour. And I'm literally going by the colour, so the colour is important now. It didn't get that yellow colour, it wasn't recognised, but I also knew already at this point, so copy here and paste it over here. When I do the dot, it doesn't recognise anything as being any part of that. So the user didn't know what that item was. That was the actual issue, and that's why that created an error. Now I hope I didn't. I wonder if I had that in the. I'm just going to check that I didn't have that in the actual. And I didn't have the email key and email index. So for some reason, I don't know why I've got email key in there twice. But let's just remove that. Just want to make sure. We'll just do that again. F5 to run it. Email index. Let's just make sure. I'm just going to take the original question. Okay, I think, yeah, I did miss out a line there. Copy that. Hit stop just to make sure, because that was you. We don't want to append the original question. I inadvertently put an extra line there. So key index, and then we're trying to get the index from the key. So that's pretty much it. I think I might leave it there. I'm hoping it's reasonably well explained. It's a list that, here in the question, it was a list of lists. This thing was intended to be a list. Well, the user didn't know that. There was no hinting or typing or telling the user. So they didn't understand. The user didn't understand their data structure. So maybe I will really put this as a code, as something here. It is important. Edit, basically, it is important to understand the data structure. Which is what to the. It is important to understand the data structure of the code, so I might put that. Control Z, I didn't mean to do that. Maybe I'll just turn it into bold. Of the data. I won't even put data structure, the structure of the data, which is what leads to the error. Okay, there we go. And then hit save. So I think that's good. Funny enough, this is a really great question, because I might actually put this in to. I really do wonder what, one of these GPTs will do. Please explain this, ? And then paste some stuff in here. Okay, and then we don't need this in particular. Oh, maybe we could have done. Okay. Let's just see what it comes back with. The code is finding the index of a specific string within the first item of user data list. Creates a string variable containing email address. Note the space before email. That's quite, because I sort of intuitively just put it in there. So that's quite an interesting one. Note the space before email. User data list, I could actually put that in my bit, but, do I want to steal from a bard or whatever? But user data list, this is assumed to be a list where the first item is also a list, perhaps of strings. Very good. This is actually, in a way, this is now better than me. better than the human, because I'm not, I'm sure there's 1,000 programmers better than me, but this is better than the human. Amazing. Because it's kind of like inferred this kind of thing over here. And I don't know, like, it is my inference, because I inferred something. I said here in the answer, I just made a hello email address, world email address, and then some blank with an email address, right? And over here it's put name, email address, and phone number. So that's quite interesting. So email index will contain an index of email address, which is the first inner list. This is actually used, the AIs use better like nomenclature than I have. It's called it an inner list, which is actually what it is. What did I say? Well, I said it's a list of lists, which is also quite good. Is a list itself. I could actually append it to, we might call this an inner list. I might actually do that. I'll leave it. I'll keep the original. So email index will contain, okay. So email index will contain an index of, I should actually share this, because actually I just realized I actually haven't shared this. So let me do that, which is, I will go to, if I can share it, I have to do a new window capture. And Claude, because it's Claude AI. And then hit OK, and then try and find, yeah, I do have it over there, and then hit OK. There we go, because that is now Claude. So I'll put this sort of like over there when I read through it, but like now you can see what I'm sort of like reading through, which is, so this Claude AI, let's just go back to it now. Yeah. So I literally just put this in here, which is how to, oh no, that was the first bit, but I didn't want that, didn't bother with that. I've gone in here and I've actually gone and pasted this question nearly as it came out, because this was the original user question. So I've gone and pasted that in, and so like, please explain this, and this is literally what the user put in there, and so I copied and pasted the whole damn lot in, and this is kind of like what came back, and it's sort of like broken it down. That's what I was reading before. The email key, so you've got email keys equal to, so it's recognize that this creates a string variable, right, containing email address, and it said notice the space before the email. So it's done all of this, and then it says use data list. It says this is assumed to be a list where the first item is also a list, perhaps of strings, and it's kind of like done this compared to what I said before, which is on my code where I did it was when I put in a list over basically here. So I made a list of things, and it was something like hello email address, and then comma goodbye email address. You go, and then comma, and then just email address. That's what it was, noticing this space, right? So I had to stick it in there, otherwise it would have broken. So as in the example, wouldn't have worked. So that's basically what it was. Well, have I got, no, that's fine, okay. So, oh yeah, that's cool. Shit, moving back, it's recognised that, and it knows it's a list of lists, and it knows that the first one is something that looks like this, and in particular, it's done the same thing, which is it's put the space before the email address. That's what we can see. And then it's got this first item, so it gets the first item, so it's called it an outer list. So you've got an outer list and an inner list, because that's what it is. It's a list of lists. So all of the lists inside the big list are called inner lists. So that's pretty much it. Then the dot index, it calls the index method on the inner list to find the list of strings. Now, one thing that it didn't do, or at least the only thing that it didn't really do, so this is like a brilliant answer. The AI has answered with better nomenclature in some places than I have, because it's talked about outer lists and inner lists. Well, that throws a bit of clarity on it. And it's done pretty much everything. It's recognized a space, it's told the user all of the components of it. And literally, I think the only thing that it hasn't done really is kind of like maybe paste an example or spoke about what is important for the clarity of it is actually the only bit it's missed is maybe this line here, line 21, where I've put a type hint to make it clear. So I should have actually put like here, the inner list is a list. Or the first index is a list. The first index is a list. i.e., and this is what Claude AI is referring to, it's an inner. Right, that's the full data structure. That's kind of like what it is. I'm not going to append the question or do any extras on it, but that's basically what it is. So I think like for flogging a dead horse, it's all done. You needed to understand your data structure. That was right in the beginning. And then you should really be using type hinting if you've got an odd shape. Let's just call it an odd shaped data structure, right? So if you've got some odd shaped data structure, describe it. And I actually do that quite often in my code when like I've got these weird things. Sometimes I've created these odd shaped data structures myself, and like a week later, not even a week later, like 3 days later, I've forgotten what the data structure looks like. Well, of course I have, because it's some convoluted thing. It'll be something like this, and the fourth item happened to be a Boolean. Like this is the first index, second index, third. So our fourth index here what happened to be a Boolean, and our fifth one happened to be pi. So that's pretty much it. If you found this useful, then hit the like button, hit the follow button, and all the other buttons that you can do, and subscribe to the channel and share it with everyone and so forth. So that's basically data structures in Python and lists of lists, and a place where you could have, or the user could have basically had an error on it. So I'm just going to do a remove order moved button where the user could have had like an error of some kind on it, and that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching.